Hello, welcome to the Mill podcast brought to you by Mill & Co. We are an advertising collective believing in strategy, storytelling, and solutions. We're here to talk about all things marketing, advertising, branding, just general marketing magic. So thank you so much for joining us. Today for episode 2 of the Mill Revival, we're going to talk about stress relief, techniques to relieve stress, and how we ultimately balance our work life. Especially for some companies, we're lucky that we are fully remote. For some people, that's not lucky. Some people like to be in the office. Some companies are hybrid. So there's a lot that's going on with the world, the economy, our work styles, our work environments that's impacting stress and that work-life balance. So today we just want to talk about a few things that we collectively do to combat that and set those boundaries and make sure that we show up every day being our best selves. So ladies, thanks for joining today. I want to ask, what are some things that you two do to relieve stress, particularly when you have a really busy schedule, since it can kind of feel like just one more thing on the list to do?
I think one of the big things that I like to do is I always have a to-do list. I can't function if I don't write everything down, whether that be in my Google Calendar or just written down on a piece of paper, and I'll highlight through like what I've done. The to-do list kind of helps me to center myself so that way like I know exactly what I have to get done, and I'm able to check that off as I go. And then another thing that I do is I'll take breaks. So I will take 5 minutes to just not think about anything that I'm doing, because a lot of the time I feel like you can get so caught up in what you're doing and you stress yourself out even more. So taking a step back for a few minutes can be really helpful.
I definitely want to reiterate what Sarah just said at the end about taking a step back, because I feel like getting some perspective and not just staring at a computer screen for 8 hours a day can be very, very helpful and give a new perspective. But I think something also not during the workday that I find really beneficial for me and just my mental and physical health is doing physical activity. I think they were right when they said it released serotonin, because it genuinely is such a great way to get your mind off things. And I don't know, it's good for your body and your mind, and if you do it with other people, it's a great way to socialize. So it's definitely something I do.
I definitely agree with that one.
What's so fascinating to me is I worked with an amazing business coach last year, Maria Cast, and we were talking about stress. And a lot of stress, at least in my case, was circulating around imposter syndrome. So the stress I was experiencing was actually stress I was creating for myself based on my perceived reality of the situation. So when I look at stress relief, for me, it doesn't start with remedy the anxiety and the pain. It starts with, what's causing this in the first place? Why am I feeling stress? Getting to the root of that first, and then saying, is this reality, or am I creating a hypothetical situation that's not quite here yet to cause myself stress? And then saying, now what are some things I can do to not let that happen, or to combat that if I start to feel it coming on, and staying really present with myself. Of course, there are stressful days and stress comes up, totally happens, and stress can be a really real thing. But when I've shifted my mindset to look at stress as it's a choice, so just as much as I can allow myself to feel stressed, I can also choose to not feel stressed and look at a situation from a different angle.
I definitely agree. I feel like I find myself often thinking worst case scenario. So that way I'm prepared. If the worst happens, I'm like, I already knew that was going to happen. And then if it doesn't, I'm like, oh, well, it was better than I thought. So I definitely agree. I think that that's another way to really help combat that.
I would say another thing that I do, it particularly helps me with my work-life balance, is my Google Calendar is my best friend. I use that thing for personal, professional, my dog's vet appointments. I schedule time to go to the gym, to wash my hair, which for all of those people watching who have trouble washing and blow drying their hair, this is for you. Okay. It is a bitch. It takes so much time. It's so hard to do. So I have to schedule it in, right? But by doing that, what it does for me is it takes it off of my mental plate and it physically puts it somewhere else. So then I don't have to remember to do all these things. I can just have my calendar do the work for me. It's like we were talking about this earlier this week. Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every single day. Why? Because we make millions of micro decisions every single day. So if you can make one decision to eliminate millions of decisions that you do every single day, think how much more productive you're going to be. So I really try hard to live by that mentality. And, you know, that's why I choose to wear a very similar looking sweater 5 days a week.
But I agree with what you said, and we did have a discussion about this yesterday, actually, I think, Rachel, about using Google Calendar even for your personal life. And that's something that I didn't used to do. I would just use it for work or school, but I've started actually implementing it in my own personal life, and I feel like it's reflected in my professional life as well, if that makes sense. Just because in general, I feel like I know what's going on in my life, so I don't have to worry about it. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the time too, I will try and schedule things with friends and they'll always be like, oh, like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I pull up my phone. I'm like, I know where I'm going to be next Thursday at 7 p.m. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is. And by doing that, and this leads me to my next question for you guys, when you have gone to that length of helping future you now, how have you experienced your productivity level by doing that?
I think for me, I have been able to be a lot more productive because I know that like this is the task I'm focusing on right now. And in 5 hours, I have a different task that I'll be focusing on and it has nothing to do with this one. So I'm not catching myself. Like in the past, I would be doing one thing and I remember like, oh, I have this other thing that I need to do. But then like I would focus on the other. It was just always mix and match with what I was doing. And now I'm able to be a lot more productive and like thoughtful with the work that I do.
And to reiterate a previous point that I think someone brought up, being able to actually physically visualize things that you need to get done is really helpful, because if it's just all in your head, like scrambled around, then you're just going to be pulling things out of thin air to do. So I definitely think that it has helped in my life and all of our lives, I think, in terms of productivity.
And, you know, I've said this line a few times before, but lack of planning perpetuates paralysis. So if I am not planning ahead, it causes me stress and I freeze. I'm sure we've all had those days where we're like, I literally have 40,000 effing things to do today. How am I ever going to get all of them done? When the reality is that probably like a 16th of those things even are relevant this week, let alone today. So, you know, I continuing to stay really present with yourself, but planning ahead and saying like, okay, let me just fully acknowledge this task that I have to do. Is this critical for today, tomorrow, this week, this month? And then how do I align that with my other tasks to create hierarchy and priority? Going to that level of planning allows you to just move through your day versus saying like, oh my God, I have this to do. And oh God, the laundry's downstairs and I'm folding it and my suitcase is still fully packed from 2 weeks ago. And like the dog food I got to order. It's impossible to live your life that way. It's unhealthy to live your life that way. So even if you aren't someone that uses your calendar, write it down, you know, make little categories of like personal, professional, dog, cat, donkey, teacup pig, whatever you're fancy, you know what I mean? Whatever farm animal you got living in your house, schedule it, think about it, put it down in paper, and then work your way through it.
I think another thing is I graduated to Google Calendar. So I used to use like a paper agenda.
Same
and, like,
here.
Everything was in my paper agenda. It came with me to the mall. It went everywhere with me. You know,
that's excessive, but I love no hate.
Mine didn't come with me to the mall.
It was color coded. It was always in my purse, and then it was just a thing to like lug around. And I was like there has to be an easier way. Yeah. And then I started using. I originally used Outlook. You know, we all have our preferences. And then I went to Google Calendar, and Google Calendar just made everything so much easier because I didn't have to carry this like notebook size like agenda with me because I couldn't use the small ones. There was too much going on. So, yeah.
I wish that I could have seen you in a shopping mall, going through your checklist. But like I would do a similar thing, you know, like I would take screenshots of the outfits that I wanted to
Yep.
like find good dupes of, and then I would go and like find them and be like, yep, okay, check that off, delete that image. So we've all been there on some level, you know, but I think going back to thinking about work and personal, I think that's one thing we haven't really chatted through, especially because we all work remotely right now, at least at Mill & Co. You know, so your home is your office is your home. What are some things that you two have done working with us, with me, to really make that separation of like, this is work, this is home, this is how I create separation, but this is also how I stay really productive when I am on?
I invested in like my office space. So I made sure that like I have a very comfortable chair. I made sure that like I was happy with the space that I was working at every day, because for me, a lot of that like stress comes from chaos. So if my space isn't like clean and doesn't look good to me, I'm not going to enjoy working. So that was one really big thing. And then another thing that I do is I schedule out my day. So like I use my Google Calendar to schedule all of my tasks, and I make sure to take that break that I put on my calendar and I completely log off. I don't check my phone. I turn on a show, or like I'll make my lunch for myself. It's just, I'm able to have that separation, and that really helps me from like work. I mean, separating work and separating like my own personal time.
Yeah, and I think the point about the office space is really important. For me, I actually like have it's not an office, but it's like a separate room that I just enter when I am working, which is really great because I can actually physically leave the room when I'm on break or when the day is over. And then it's like, it's basically an office space, I guess. I'm commuting by walking down a flight of stairs, but it definitely does make a difference. So I think that's the main thing that I do. And then I guess I agree with Syra about actually committing to taking breaks when you schedule them, and then logging off for the night and being done for the night once you are done.
A lot of those same things, you know, I've been remote since 2018 when I launched Mill & Co. And I went from like very intense, you absolutely are not allowed to work from home, which, you know, then we hit COVID, and all of a sudden all those businesses that were like, you can't work from home, suddenly everyone's working from home, and it's like, it's cool now. So
Right.
That's funny. But, you know, I think for me, setting boundaries that work for everyone, but mostly for me, has been really beneficial. For example, nights and weekends, I cherish. You know, like when I'm on, I am on, and I'm in, and I'm working hard, but I know when I need to cut out. And I do my best to do so. One of the things I learned pretty early on in my career was, if you have a client, particularly for anyone watching that's in a client service business, if you have a client that emails you perpetually at 8 p.m. on a Sunday and fires off a bunch of emails, if you respond, you are showing them that they can get a hold of you at that time, which to me is an unacceptable time to be reaching out, unless something has completely exploded, which, by the way, in marketing, we are not heart surgeons. There's no heart in the cooler. We are not saving lives. However, there may be a random emergency. So that caveat aside, if you show them that you're going to respond at those times, even when you don't want to and you're not on, it's not the client's fault for reaching out to you at 8 p.m. on a Sunday. That's on you for responding and enabling that behavior. Rather, waiting until Monday morning and sending a note just saying, hey, I saw your email from last night. Just so you know, I typically clock out for nights and weekends, but now that I'm back on Monday morning, I'd be more than happy to look into this for you. Showing empathy, showing compassion, showing understanding, but also setting a very gentle and firm boundary at the same time. So again, a lesson I learned very early in my career, that the cleaner I communicate my boundaries, the more that they are respected, and the more that I find I have now more time because my time is being respected and my boundaries are being observed.
I agree. And I feel like that also ties into like your coworkers as well. I know that all of us have we're very good with our boundaries, and, you know, we're not messaging each other about work at 8 p.m. But there's definitely environments, and I've worked in environments where like, it's not on purpose, but like people will message you on a Friday night at 8 p.m. like, hey, I just had a quick question. And I think it's really important, like, set those boundaries with clients, but also set them with your coworkers so that they know that you're not going to answer like a simple question of where's this folder on a Friday night because you clocked out.
Being on the same page about your boundaries as well, especially within an organization, is super important. So, for example, if you're someone watching this right now who works at a company that does not respect your boundaries as an employee, you know, some tips could be writing down instances of where your boundaries were crossed. Let's say perhaps you're not sure how to communicate what your boundaries even are. By documenting the areas and times in which you felt this crossed a boundary, and then looking at all of it on paper, it might help you start to articulate, oh, okay, it seems like I don't like when people email me at 4:58 p.m. and ask for a huge document by end of day today that I haven't started yet. Or I've noticed that I'll get a lot of emails on weekends and the language feels very urgent, even though it's things that aren't urgent. By just recognizing what it is that doesn't feel right to you will help you be able to effectively communicate to your employer, your superior, your manager, your colleague, your direct report. Hey, I just wanted to call a few things to your attention. I wrote them all down. These are some things that were happening. Moving forward, here are my recommendations. If you have an urgent project, let's set up time to talk through this. Put 30 minutes on my calendar first thing the next morning, and let's talk through it together. By doing that, you're not saying, F off, don't email me. I don't care about your project, right? You're being a good team player and saying, I know that this is important to you, and I want to dedicate my full time to this, but I can't do that with 12 minutes left in my day when I've got to go and I've got a thing and I got to go to dance class. I got to go, I'm going to get dinner, or you know what, it's 5 and I want to be off, right? So you're setting your boundary, but you're also letting your coworker or whoever know, I respect what you need and I'm here for you. Let's do it at a time that works for both of us.
I also wanted to bring up, since specifically for Mill & Co., a big part of the way that we function is we work with contractors and freelancers. So I think it's important to bring up that we also make it a big thing for us to make sure we're also respecting the time and energy of the people that we're working with that are outside of our organization. So
like us, they may even have a 9 to 5 and they work 7 to 11 with us, you know, so us having to understand their workflow, I think is what has made us so successful, because the freelancers that we work with feel respected. They feel like we are respecting their time. They feel like we're very, very organized. We effectively communicate what we need. And we also try our best to build in timelines in advance for things and deadlines that hopefully won't put us in positions where we are constantly asking for a next day turnaround. Look, it happens all the time, right? But it's something that we actively work towards not happening. And truthfully, the effort of doing that is what will ultimately get you to that place. I'm going to set a boundary and end this podcast. Yes. Thank you guys. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Syra, amazing account managers. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and milling around with us. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our quarterly trend trackers, just a free, in-depth research report that we pull together each quarter about different industries, different social channels, different platforms, and things that we're seeing just happening in the marketing world itself. Until next time, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.